you got to think that it can happen this year. This year has got to be the year that we actually see Jahan Dotson take that next step into NFL stardom. Welcome into Falcons Today, presented by Prize Picks. You're hanging out with your guy, Moose. Thank you so much for joining me today. He is my biggest breakout candidate for the Atlanta Falcons. There were a ton of you that got down in the comment section of the last videos that I made talking about some of the concerns that I had about Jahan Dotson, and you were like, you are sleeping on this man, Moose. No, I'm not, because I have just as high expectations for Jahan Dotson as you do, mostly because there is still an ongoing battle for wide receiver 2. Mostly between Jahan Dotson and Zachariah Branch. Now, Zachariah Branch, according to not only me, but other NFL talking heads, he looks more like that stereotypical yak monster, although way more than just a screen merchant, right? We've talked about that numerous times. If you think he's just a screen merchant, get out of here. But yak ability is unrivaled on the team. Jahan Dotson, versatile player, can play a little out of the slot, can play out wide, and brings a very solid floor. And if we assume that this is the year that Jahan Dotson actually breaks out, you wouldn't need to sign a player like Deebo Samuel. You wouldn't need to sign a player like Stephon Diggs because you would have the trio already set in place. Now, I've got some good things. I've got some bad things. A little bit of both on this episode, so I'm going to break it all down. You're going to want to stick around until the very end. Before I get to that, though, I was checking out the analytics, guys. It's the perfect time to do it if it's, June 30th now? We are almost at 14% on the Noti Gang. Right on the edge. Don't be the one that does not hit the bell icon and select the all option. I made it very simple for you guys. All you got to do, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, select all. That's it. 3 easy steps. You'll be a smarter Falcons fan for it, and you'll stay up to date with everything that we've got going on. All right, let's start with some of the bad, because Jahan Dotson, for as high as a draft prospect as he was coming out of Penn State, he hasn't had the greatest start to his NFL career. So he comes in last year with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2025, the lowest first read reception percentage. Now, it might sound like a lot, but it'll make it very easy for you. When he was targeted on the first read, meaning the play was designed for him, his reception percentage was some of the worst amongst the NFL's wide receivers. This should easily be over 70%. It's not. It was the same rate, or a little bit lower, actually, than guys like Van Jefferson. That's not very good. And we also know that last year didn't see a lot of volume for Jahan Dotson. A.J. Brown, 78 receptions. Devontae Smith, 77 receptions. Jahan Dotson had 18, but it's not entirely his fault. I mean, the stats in and of themselves are just blech. You would not wish this on your worst enemy. I'm telling you, maybe a Saints player. But 18 receptions, 262 yards, 1 touchdown. The average is something, though, that I want to hyperfixate on here. 14.5 yards per catch and only 8 first downs. You mean to tell me that a player that makes a living playing past the sticks had 8 first downs? I mean, that just proves to me that there was no target in mind whatsoever for Jahan Dotson. Statistically speaking, the Eagles were one of the worst offenses in the NFL when throwing the football. They took the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands and Jahan Dotson's hands. They literally told you, we don't feel comfortable in the Kevin Patullo run offense to throw the football. In fact, the numbers will shock you at just how bad Jalen Hurts' passing yards per game were. I've got more coming up here. Don't go anywhere. Before I get to it, though, I do have to remind you guys, to keep the bills paid and the lights on, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Knockout rounds in the World Cup. You got to be getting in on all the action. JD is playing today. I took a little bit of a break, right? Obviously, the wife is coming at me and is like, well, you don't spend too much money. All right, that's fine. I'll just piggyback off of JD. So what you're going to do is download the Prize Picks app today. You're going to use code HMA to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Now, we've talked a lot about different types of features that you can utilize on Prize Picks, and one of my favorite ones is the power play, because You don't have to spend that much money to win more money. $10 to win $195 if you copy JD's lineup in the new social feeds feature. And here's the great thing. If you don't feel super comfortable about this, look, slide for a refund. It really is that simple. So what you're going to do is do Uncle Moose a favor. You're going to download the Prize Picks app today. You're going to use code HMA to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code HMA to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. All of that in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks. It is good to be right. So remember when I told you that they took the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands? Geno Smith, who was statistically one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. In fact, he might have been the worst. He had more passing yards per game than Jalen Hurts. Well, Moose, the Raiders were always down. Of course, they had to throw more. Okay, you got me there. But Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl champion. I hear constantly from Eagles fans that he should be treated like a top 10 quarterback. If you can't outthrow Geno Smith, that tells me either A, your offensive coordinator was a moron, and Kevin Patullo was, or B, you're kind of overvaluing your quarterback. In this case, I think it's a little bit of both. Why do I think that? Well, let's take it all the way back to October of 2025. So what are we in now? Week 5 here, week 6 in the NFL. Jalen Hurts targeting his wide receivers over 10 yards downfield. 10 of 28 for 35% completion rate. That ranked number 35 and number 30, respectively. That's buns. And you mean to tell me that Jahan Dotson was supposed to succeed, have a lot of success in that offense? Give me a break. I mean, look at his ADOT. This tells the whole story. This tells the entire picture. Dotson's average depth of target was 14.5 yards per route run. That means that the average time that he hit the apex of his route was 14.5 yards. And we just saw that, statistically speaking, Jalen Hurts was mega buns dumpster juice at throwing past 10 yards. So what was Jahan Dotson? Underutilized and completely slept on. I mean, hell, A.J. Brown demanded a trade out of Philadelphia because he couldn't work with Jalen Hurts. We can expect a little bit of the same treatment here for Jahan Dotson. I'm not saying they're on the same level. They're not. But Tanner Engstrand, our passing game coordinator, said it beautifully when he was talking about what he sees from Jahan Dotson. A versatile player with a lot of speed and playing bigger than maybe the numbers say at times. He wants to be physical. He wants to be involved. He wants to take shots. He wants to be that stretch the field player. So does he do it this year? Is this the year that we finally see Jahan Dotson actually take that next step? All of the pieces are in place. Now, there are some concerns, and you'd be right to think so, and I have to address those as well because I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't. But I'll ask you this question before we continue on. Is this the year that he officially breaks out? Listen, if you're going to be a part of the show, you got to answer the question. Type Y for yes, type N for no. At least defend your answer down in the comment section down below. So now it's time to give you the prediction and the roll for 2026. And spoiler alert, I have a lot of high hopes for Jahan Dotson in his role and in his statistical output. But let's start with what Jahan Dotson said about his specific role. He said, they're definitely giving me an opportunity to make a name for myself. Now, he's going to roll with that, right? The Falcons are going to put him in a position. Remember, he was the first wide receiver they brought in. Actually, second, excuse me. It was Olamide Zaccheaus, then Jahan Dotson in free agency. So he was high on the Falcons list. They believe they can turn him into a very reliable wide receiver 3. Now, he's not without fault, though, because let's be honest. Like I told you at the beginning of today's episode, the start to the season, or not the season, start to his career hasn't been very great, right? Barnwell called it the worst move for the Falcons all offseason long. You wouldn't say that if you traded for A.J. Brown or Jalen Waddle, right? So I understand that there's some criticism and some skepticism that comes surrounding Jahan Dotson's name. But I also think Barnwell doesn't watch nearly enough Falcons football to really give an accurate depiction of what this offense is going to look like. But let's stick with the negatives for a second. The worst wide receivers last year at getting open, according to Warren Sharp Analytics, found Jahan Dotson's name on the list. And I had to do a little bit of extra homework, right? Because you can't just rely on one person's opinion as gospel. Well, this is from ESPN. Yards per route run. Jahan Dotson came in 91st at 0.6. And he tied with David Sills. Do you guys remember how bad David Sills was last year? I'll just give you a second to kind of reflect on that and get that throw up feeling from your gut out of there. But it just goes to show you, everybody can have a down year, but everybody can build it back up. And there's a major reason why I think he can build it back up. It's the role on the field that he's going to be playing. Dotson's a Z wide receiver. Now, a lot of Eagles fans would say, well, they didn't use him nearly enough out of the slot. I think he's a hybrid. Move him in the slot, move him out wide. Here's my role for him. Take a look at this nice little play design. It looks like it was kind of written up by a fifth grader, actually. But it does its job. It does the purpose. Look at the Z wide receiver route. That's a dig over the middle. Your X receiver is obviously going to be Drake London. Your Y is going to be Kyle Pitts. Your H is going to be Zachariah Branch. That's your slot wide receiver. If you move Jahan Dotson in motion, if you decide to keep him up the seam, if you can push him out wide right next to Kyle Pitts, you will find that moving him in and out of formation is probably the best route for success for Jahan Dotson, no pun intended. Because what does that Z position allow him to do? Free release off the line of scrimmage. It allows him motion to disrupt the secondary and those intermediate and deep route tree routes that he loves to run. So you combo that with the fact that I think Tua and Michael Penix throw a much better football than Jalen Hurts. I'll say it. I think Jalen Hurts is a good winner. I don't know that he's a great quarterback, right? As in a pure passer. He's a great athlete. He's a great runner. He can do the tush-push really well. Is Jalen Hurts a dynamic pocket passing quarterback? No, he's not. So here's what I think from Jahan Dotson this year. Here's my drum roll prediction. Are you ready? Boom. 49 grabs, 696 yards, 5 touchdowns, 14.2 yards a pop. That's unbelievable wide receiver 3 numbers right there. If you can get close to 700 yards as a wide receiver 3, you're doing something right. So I look at Jahan Dotson as probably one of the biggest breakout candidates on the Falcons, at least on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, that's a video for another day. But he just looks good. He looks like he's a man on a mission right now when he's at Falcons OTAs, when he's at Falcons mandatory minicamp. I can't wait to see what training camp brings, because when they signed Jahan Dotson, when I went back and rewatched myself reacting to it, I saw myself light up. And I was like, damn, Moose was really excited when Jahan Dotson signed. So that initial excitement hasn't gone away. It just needs to be expanded upon. All right, that's all I got. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, guys. Come on, don't be the one guy that didn't do it. 13.9%. We're on the cusp. 14% needs to be hit. So hit the icon, select the all option, and until next time, Falcons fans, rise up and be cool.